Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Winter's almost here, and when you think of winter in the Northeast Kingdom, you think of skiing. Today's guest is Steve Wright, the general manager of the J-Peak Ski Resort. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott.
Hey, how are things going? You've already gotten snow at the mountain.
Yeah, we got a couple feet of snow over the last 2 or 3 weeks. It allowed us to get open last weekend, so that would have been the Friday after Thanksgiving. Right. We had 3 days that we ran and opened those 3 days. We did about 1,200 guests a day. Then we closed for this midweek period, and then we reopened for 7-day operations starting this coming Saturday, which I believe is the 3rd.
So we're, after last winter, that was a tough winter for anybody involved in winter. In winter sports, because I call it the year without a winter. I know that wasn't necessarily true for you folks because you're up there and you can make snow.
Mm-hmm. It was close to the year without a winter for us even. We usually get somewhere between 350 and 380 inches of snow a year. Last year we didn't even hit 200. So even though we got more than most ski resorts in New England, it still impacts our ability to attract guests. That narrative in the market was this is the year without a winter, and it definitely impacted us.
You must have been pretty excited though to have that water park, because that had to have saved you some.
Probably more so than any winter that we've had since we've had the pump house open. It helped us. It helped not only bring a new crowd of guests to the mountain, but it helped protect those people who booked ski vacations. Because they knew that there was something else that they could do once they got there.
So you've had some fairly early snow. What, looking into the future, have you been able to? Is there any weather pattern that might be favoring the ski industry this year?
Usually this time of year, I listen to anybody who tells me that it's going to be a good winter.
Right.
So anybody that is willing to put out a long-range forecast that says it's going to be cold and snowy, I pay attention to. But in all honesty, most of the reports that we put a lot of stock into, or put any stock into, say that at worst it's going to be a normal winter, which for J-Peak ends up being, a great winter. Right. And from what we've seen already. Not so much just the natural snow that we've gotten, but the cycle of cold that we've seen. Right. I mean, as you and I are talking right now, there's some rain here down in Newport, but we just finished 4 consecutive days of really good snowmaking on the state side of the resort because we had really good temperatures. At this point last year, we hadn't even seen that cycle of cold start to come in. So, and I look forward. I usually pay attention to weather forecasts that are anywhere from 10 days to 14 days out. Any more than that is awfully tough to really get behind.
So you don't swear by the Farmer's Almanac?
Well, like I said, I listen to it when it has good news, but I don't operationally plan based on it. But 10 to 14 days out, even right now, we're looking good for good cycles of cold as we get into that December holiday period. So we're pretty excited about that.
One of my writers, he's actually a homeboy here from Newport originally, is Derek Marute, who's an amateur weatherman and a commercial airline pilot. He wrote an article for me about the J Cloud, that there really is a phenomenon that he calls, and everybody calls the J Cloud, that the weather gods love to dump snow.
Yeah,
on top of J.
I think Derek and the other weather folks would call it orographic uplift, which has to. I'm over my head immediately when I start talking about this, but it has to do with storms and the way that they come in, and when they hit that first landmass up around this part of the world, it slows the storm down. Right. And the storms tend to stay a little bit longer and drop a little bit more moisture.
Right, yeah. Because that's, as you know, I've written extensively about the history of the resort, and that was the reason that J-Peak just looked so promising. It was a high mountain, but also, it always has snow. Okay, it's no secret J-Peak went through a rough patch during the last year, but how are you doing now?
We're doing well. I mean, it's we're starting into December, which for us marks about week 30 of our fiscal year. So we're into the third quarter of our year. Our year starts May 1st. That was right after we went into the receivership scenario that we're still under right now. Last time I came on the show was right after that, and we were talking about that we had 60 or 70 weddings on the books. We had a really big piece of conference business in the Porsche Club of North America, and those were the things that we were focused on immediately. And brides and wedding parties were concerned. That word about the receivership got into the market, and we talked to nearly every bride and every wedding party that had plans to come to Jay. Talked to all of them, let them know that the situation, although from an ownership perspective was in flux, that our ability to deliver a good wedding and good service for their wedding was still certainly there. So about 95% of those weddings still decided to come. We did lose a few. But then the Porsche Club quickly thereafter came and had their annual event at Jay Peak, which impacted the entire region. I know you and I were talking before about seeing Porsches all over the place here, but we put on a great event for them. Our employees, the employees, especially considering that the employees were still in a state of shock after that April 13th event. Within 2 months, were expected to pull themselves together and deliver a really difficult event for upwards of 1,600 people. It amazed me. I was there for every day, and the work that our employees did on that event was amazing.
Well, as you know, I was the guest Northeast Kingdom speaker for the group, and so I got to hang out with the organizers, and they told me bluntly they tried everything to back out. They tried to find, because they did not know if you would be open for that event. And they were utterly astonished by what you guys pulled off. Is not only did you do a good job, but some of them said it was the best Porsche gathering they have ever held.
Yeah, I mean, right after the last time you and I spoke, I went to Washington to meet with the folks at Porsche Club, because there was concern. There wasn't a concern that we wouldn't necessarily be open. Right. Their concern was that we wouldn't be able to deliver on the service levels that their clients had come to expect, because it's a pretty affluent group of folks. Obviously, if you're driving around in multiple Porsches, you have high expectations of everything in your life. But we assured them that the service levels, we could meet them and we could exceed them. And by we, I mean the employees, because all I did was make the promise that we could, and our employees were the ones who really delivered on it.
Do you know, I've dealt with a lot of groups in my life as a speaker or whatever. I told them when I spoke, I have never dealt with such a overall nice group of people as the Porsche folks.
100%. I had the expectation, I think you and I talked about this before too, that you have this preconceived notion of Porsche owners that they're going to come in and their expectations of you are going to be so high that it's almost impossible to deliver on them. But I met a lot of folks that week up there, and they were really, really beautiful people. I mean, they really were, and they couldn't have been more effusive in the praise that they were throwing at everybody. And they were. It's one thing to enjoy your experience when you come to an event like that, but it's another thing to take the time to approach the employees and tell them how much it means that they can see you working hard for them. So that was something that was it really surprised both myself and all the employees up there about how those folks were.
Yeah, that's the way I told them that when I spoke, and I think they really appreciated that people also noticed that they were, they were really good people. And I learned a lot about Porsches. Like, Porsche also at one time produced tractors. Yeah. So that was good. So what do you got lined up for the, we're heading into the winter season. What else do you have lined up?
Well, if we just take a half a step back to that Porsche event, we got into the season pass sales period for the resort. The deadline was the end of May. There was sort of turbulence in the market, so we moved that deadline back to the end of July to give the season pass holders a chance to get their heads around what was happening, because that's a segment of our market that has to commit money beforehand. So in order to do that, there has to be some level of confidence that there's going to be a product for them. So we pushed the deadline back. We gave ourselves a month or 6 weeks to try to communicate to them that things were status quo and that we were good to go. Season pass sales now are a few percentage points behind where we were last year at this point. But I think a lot of us ascribe that to having a dreadful winter the year before, because that always impacts someone's decision to buy a season pass in the following year.
Right.
So we're trending in the right direction with that. And then quickly after we got our arms around season pass holders, it was the vacation bookers, right? So usually come July and August, you start having folks book vacations for the following holiday periods because they don't want to miss their spots. So we usually start to see Christmas fill up, starting in August. We usually start to see President's Week start to fill up, some of the Canadian holidays. And we weren't seeing that. And that started to concern us. So we took a step back, got some messaging out to some of our affinity groups that things were okay. We got some different marketing messaging out there in the market. In the month of September and October, we made up a ton of ground to the point where now we're actually a few percentage points ahead in terms of package bookings compared to where we were last year at this time. So that has, more than anything, I think, has given us reason to be confident about where we're headed.
But again, though, I think that your little delay there may also be involve the weather, because after like what was Christmas week? Well, I remember the night before Christmas, I was actually out on my deck just to say I did it. Had a photo shoot of me in my shorts and T-shirt. It was 60 degrees something like 60 degrees on Christmas Eve, and I had my grill going.
Yeah.
So how was the skiing on
Well,
Christmas?
it was tough. I mean, we started Christmas week last year with only a handful of trails. I think we ended up with 7 trails heading into the 26th last year, which is awfully tough. Not only on the people who were there, obviously the guests trying to enjoy that, but it really imprints on those folks about the following year.
Right.
So we've had to really go out and talk about this good start that we've had here, and had to talk about the fact that we plan to expand trails heading into the holidays. So
how many trails do you have open right now?
We have, actually today we're not open. On Saturday we'll have 3 or 4 trails open, but the forecast that we see for next week looks like we're going to be able to expand to half a dozen to 9 trails as we get into the following weekend.
Right.
So.
And this year, if I recall right, is it this year is the 50th anniversary of your Tram?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so
and that brings us to after we got through season pass holders and vacationers, we had the whole narrative about the Tram, and that the media was reporting that the Tram wouldn't run until $6 million in upgrades happened. The reality was that the Tram wouldn't run until we committed to making those upgrades,
right.
Which the receiver Michael Goldberg, very smartly and very quickly after he took control of the asset, realized that we needed to make those upgrades. So he secured the funds. We made the down payment to Doppelmayr so they could start producing the gear that we were going to need for that upgrade, that electrical upgrade, because the electrical system was 50 years old. And you can't run down to Walmart and find a part for the Tram when it breaks, when you have a 50-year-old electrical system. So once Michael committed to those funds, the state came in, approved the Tram. We ran all summer, had a record in terms of Tram revenue over the summer. And the Tram will be inspected for winter operations this week. We're going to run the Tram all winter. Sometime middle of April, we'll shut the Tram down and we'll complete all those upgrades, so it'll be ready to go in June.
One of the men who actually went to Austria before it even arrived is still alive, Dwayne Lucier. He was. I think he went to Austria where it was made. If I'm correct, the country, but So. Some of your pioneers are still kicking around. They're starting to slip away though.
Yeah.
But Sonny Cody, who I've interviewed, and he's been on my show, my radio show. He talks about the days of when before the Tram, where they actually where they would go up to the top of Stateside and then walk across over and then ski down through the woods and that. But
certainly a more affordable way to run the resort back then.
well, I often look at the skiers today, and I've interviewed several people from the old days of skiing, and I'm thinking, wow, you know, people whine if the lines are a little long. Well, compared to what those guys had to do,
Yeah.
it's like, wow,
Yep.
I'll take stand. But you don't have much in the way of lines anymore, do you? Because of all of your lift capacity.
Well, it's both the lift capacity and you know, the trail system, where once skiers and snowboarders offload and get into the woods, the process really slows down. You know, we're not a typical ski resort where, you know, you offload and race down to the bottom and get back on again. The experience of riding in the glades slows things down a little bit of a different experience than what happens at most resorts. So.
Well, that's true, because if you go up there and you really twist around, you can stay up there for quite some time.
Absolutely, a lot of twisting.
Yeah, and in the older, I don't know about you, but have you discovered that snow is a lot harder than when we were young? As in, like, you don't bounce. Do you bounce as well as you used to?
It could be that I'm softer than when I was young too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So are you optimistic?
Yeah, I mean, you and I've talked about this before. I think if you're in the snow business, that you have to be. Every aspect of your personality has to have some optimism to it. I think I'm most optimistic by how these leisure folks from LHR have come in and worked with us. It's really helped the perspective of all the employees here, because they focus on, you know, what it is that they're strong at, which they have a lot of strengths, but they also realize that some of the resort operations that we may have strong perspectives to, and they give us the ability to manage within a framework. You know?
Yeah, but and I know I've told you this before, is I think one of the wisest things they did was keep you. And the reason I say that is they could have come in and they could have said with the management is out with the old, in with the new, because you were their marketing person, correct?
Yeah.
I think that was so wise, because you're known, you're respected, you raise your kids here, and I think if they had put somebody else in your position, somebody from outside the area, it would have been having to learn everything from the ground up, including getting to know the people. And I think the people here, I think they like to know. You know, they like to know the people.
Yeah, certainly for the employees, I think it was the right thing for them to do. Obviously, I may be biased on that front. I think it was the right thing to do. I think it was the easier thing to do as well. So a combination of the right thing and the easy thing is always helpful. I mean, long term, who knows? You know, this place is going to be sold. Somebody may come in there and say, "I'm going to put somebody else in charge and wipe the slate." But I think short term, short and medium term, I think it's working out, because the employee sentiment has stabilized. And again, that's not a result of what I'm doing necessarily. I think it's a combination of what Leisure Resorts has done, but also what Michael has done as the receiver. He has been very upfront about what his goal and what his job to do is, and that narrative has pushed down to the employees so that they understand what's happening.
You know, I go up to the mountain quite a bit, as you know, for my work, and I always find everybody so happy. You know, I will tell you, you know, when that all came down, there was a little, you know, people wondering. But, you know, I find everybody so happy and polite. Like, I love running into Tom Howell. He's
very happy.
Former state trooper, high stress job, and now he's head of security. You know, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to get rid of him. He seems so happy with his job.
Tom's great, and Tom's emblematic of the staff in general. And I think it's good that we're in a service business, because our employees compartmentalize things, right? You've got these stresses that are brought on by things that are completely out of their control, that being the narrative in the media. So that narrative changes your sentiment on a daily basis. Good news, your sentiment goes up. Bad news, confusing news, sentiment goes down. But at the end of the day, the employees need to service the guests. So they have to compartmentalize their feelings in such a way as it doesn't impact their ability to service the guests. Because really that's something we talk about there all the time, is that we can't manage what the story is, but we can manage the way that we deal with our guests. That's really what we all get paid for. And the employees at J Peak are phenomenal in their ability to do that compartmentalization. They really are.
No, I agree. So the mountain is up for sale, though,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
And how's that going?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm on a need-to-know basis with some of that stuff, but you know, Goldberg's job is to stabilize the asset first and foremost, and that stability is connected to a need to make sure that when the business is sold, it fetches the highest net value that we possibly can bring, because you know, that part of the equation, that selling of the resort, ultimately contributes to our ability to pay back investors, make contractors whole, make vendors whole, which Michael has committed to doing. But all of that making our creditors whole is predicated on getting as high of a return on the sale of Jay Peak and Burke as humanly possible. So all the decisions that he makes, whether it's paying a vendor or not paying a vendor, paying a contractor or not paying a contractor, all of those decisions are connected to trying to figure out a way to keep the value of the assets as high as humanly possible for when they're sold.
So to be realistic is probably even underneath, because of that, they're probably even hoping for a really good winter.
Without question, without question. I mean, that really drives everything. You have a good winter and you have a solid business plan that connects to a good winter, you make money. And when you make money, you have a lot more flexibility in how you run things, and you have a lot more flexibility in the decisions that you make as you get out of the ski season.
You know, I was born and raised here. Some of my family's been here since the beginning of the time, and it's been interesting to watch Jay Peak expand, because, you know, picture this, it was only, well, it was 1950s, and the way they were grooming trails was, you know, as Sonny Cody said, they would have these big, in the early days, they'd have these big drums that they would drag behind them, and you know, and then they finally got a groomer,
yeah.
So then here we are today. You know, with all bad said and done about some of the things that have gone on, we do have a beautiful resort, and that's the same thing with Burke.
Yeah.
Now it's to move forward, because I think some people, there's so many people who love to get stuck in, you know, the negative. You know, we all know it was unfortunate what happened, but now we have to move forward. And if Mother Nature, you know, helps out, that would be really good.
Sure. I mean, and yeah, I get that part about being stuck, because I find myself in that situation sometimes too. You know, I have bad days where I wake up and I feel a little bit stuck with some things too. But you know, we had a business meeting last night up in Jay where we talked to some of the business owners, where, you know, part of what we were talking about is where we've ended up with a resort that is very current and has a bunch of weatherproof amenities that are attached to it. So the obligation that we have at this point is to try to run that business in a way that we become as profitable as we can.
Do you know, it often amazes me the number of people down here in the lowlands of Newport, Derby, and such that have never been to the resort since it's been built, as in since it's become a resort. And when I go up there, you know, to be honest, there's days when I go up to visit, I don't know what country I'm in, because I'm hearing different languages from around the world. That's a city in its own, especially in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. There are days that I go up there and I see some of those same things. We put some products into the market that were designed at trying to pull, you know, from Montgomery to Newport and those folks in a little bit. One of the things was a summer season pass to the water park that has been really popular, because we get compression dies down in the summer in the water park. In the winter, it's you know, it's busy as heck in there, and you can't really have season pass holders in there at the same time you're trying to let guests who are in one of our 600 rooms also use the park. But from May to November, we do a season pass that's a family season pass that I think is around $200. It allows 4 people to go up there as many times as they want from May to November, and we've seen a lot of locals take advantage of that.
That's a good, because to any of the locals haven't been to the water park, it's almost like surreal, because, and I don't know if you're still the wonderment has rubbed off on you yet, but anytime I go there, it's like you're in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of a sudden you're going in from the cold, and it's, you know, you're like in a tropical paradise.
Yeah, one of the things we say, you know, for me, you know, anytime I'm having one of those days that we talked about before where things get a little difficult, you walk into the water park and that landing area, right after you go through the ticket sales area where it overlooks the entire park, there's nothing better than just standing off in the corner and, you know, watching a 7-year-old kid with their parents walk into that area who hasn't seen the park before, who maybe walking in with their ski gear even, and look out over the park like that and watch their faces light up. I mean, it happens. It happens all the time. It's an area that we've taken pictures of kids for our marketing collateral because you can set your watch by it. That as soon as a kid comes in and that point where they see the park for the first time is, like you said, it's magic.
You know what I've never done? Well, the first thing I did, I'd heard so much about the big slide. What is it?
The red slide, let's shoot.
Yeah, let's shoot.
Yeah.
I said, okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And that was my first thing I did. And of course, the first time you go down, it was like, okay, you're so busy holding your breath, you don't even know what hit you. So I had to go right back up and do it again. Yeah. But so I got that out of the way. You know, the one thing I haven't done is the wave, the surf.
The flow rider. Yeah, the surf wave.
Yeah, I don't think I'm coordinated enough to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you may be right. For me, the first time I did that, I fell so hard my wedding ring came off, and I think I cracked my tooth. And I got progressively better to the point where I could stand up. It's still not the prettiest thing you've ever seen, but it seems like snowboarders specifically, and anybody with a little bit of coordination really gets up on that wave pretty quickly. And it becomes very, very addictive. It's something that, you know, aside from the chute, that flow rider, the double flow rider that we have in there ends up being one of the most popular attractions, to the point where, you know, we have situations where groups will come in and just rent that flow rider. They'll come in for an after hours, which we do during the winter and summer, but you can rent the wave for a couple of hours where you bring in some of your friends and just sit there and have a little session there for yourself. Okay, we only have a couple more minutes left.
What more do you have to say?
Well, you know, it's one of the things that you know, we're trying to get behind. We've got a new website up there called Behind the Flake, and it's a website that's dedicated to the communities that surround Jay Peak. You know, we try to recognize the fact that, you know, people may come for skiing and, you know, the ice rink and water parks, but when they get here, we want them to get out and explore a little bit. And that Behind the Flake is going to mention things like the softer side of Jay Peak Vacations, like the communities of Montgomery, of Jay, and of Newport. And it also talks about some of the charitable foundations, and we have a bunch of scholarships that we've created in the name of past employees that we give out to local kids. There are a bunch of charities that we work with on a regular basis. Green Mountain Farm to School, which is, you know, in the middle of a big donation period right now. Folks can go out to gmfts.org or greenmountainfarmtoschool.org to donate. We work with the folks at NEK, which I know that you're fond of the folks there as well. Yep. They're in the middle of a toy drive right now. So if you go out to the NEK website, you can find out where folks can drop off unwrapped toys. But we have a bunch of those organizations that we try to work with, because, you know, we realize that our place in the community isn't just to sell lift tickets and attract people. It's to support those communities to the extent that we can.
You know, that's the one thing throughout the years Jay Peak has done so right. Being a writer and a former marketing, well, no, actually, I am a marketing person because, you know, for my own business. That's one thing Jay Peak has done so well, and you know, I know you were the marketing person, Jay Peak has always been part of the community, not just with the skiing, not just with the boarding, but you have been part of this community, and I think that's why people have largely stood behind you in these tough times, because you weren't just that place on the hill.
No, we never have been, and, you know, that's really testament to the way Bill has run the place forever. It's, you know, he's a part of this community, has been a part of this community, and that's, you know, part of his legacy is the supporting of the surrounding communities, and it's something that, you know, we as the administration up there now takes very seriously. I mean, I'm, like we talked about, I'm a part of this community too. I have kids here, my wife, we live down here, and it's something that personally I take very seriously.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on as when the winter gains its grip on the area. Well,
Absolutely.
hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how things are going.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott.
All right, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.